with your colleagues, and some of them you'll still call Herr Wolters after you've been working with them for 30 years. You're still Herr Wolters and not even on a first name sometimes. So do be aware of that. Now, it's not always the case. You can make friends, but I think it is one of those things that's important to mention, because finding that good friend base when you first move abroad is really important, so you have that social connection.
Olá, pessoal! Sejam bem-vindos ao meu canal. Meu nome é Natália, mas você pode me chamar de Nath. Eu adoro reagir e aprender sobre outros países, especialmente aqueles bem diferentes do meu em termos culturais e econômicos. Então, se você gosta desse tipo de conteúdo, fique à vontade para se inscrever. Vou adorar ter você por aqui. Bom, nesse vídeo eu vou reagir trabalhando na Europa versus trabalhando nos Estados Unidos. O que ninguém fala. Então é isso, sem mais delongas, e vamos para a reação.
Hey there, fellow travelers, or should I say fellow worker abroaders? Mark here with Wolters World, and today what I'll talk about are some of the differences that Americans notice when they come to work in Europe. Because a lot of people, their dream is, I'm going to move to Europe, I'm going to work there, and everything's going to be great. And it can be. I've actually lived in Europe for like 12 years, 13 years, and worked in a lot of different places. I worked in Lithuania, I worked in Portugal, I worked in Austria, I've gone all over, worked with the locals, been part of the team, had to pay the taxes and all those things. And I kind of want to go through some of the differences that American workers really kind of notice when they come to work in Europe. And sometimes you'll see the jokes that, oh, they get all the vacation time, haha. Yeah, that's true. But there's also some more serious things as well, okay? And I want to start with the one that people talk about the most. You have so much more time off when you work in Europe than when you work in the US. And I'm not just talking the vacation time they give you, I'm talking about just normal holidays they give you off, which is really nice because you can have a much better work-life balance when you're in Europe than in the US, okay? Because you just have more time to be you. You have more time to be with your family. You have more time to exist on your own without just having work be everything. And that's one of those nice things to it. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that people notice is just that amount of free time you do have. Because another thing that Americans notice when they come to Europe is work stops when work stops. If work is 9 to 5, you work 9 to 5. You can be mid-sentence, it's 5 o'clock, we're out. And no one holds it against you. There's no like, oh, we need to stay in for the team. No, we're pulling an all-nighter tonight. We need you to work an extra 10 hours this weekend. No, that stuff doesn't happen here. Like, I mean, it can happen, but it doesn't really happen. It's much more, oh, work's over. We didn't get it done. We didn't get it done. Moving on till Monday. I got stuff to do this weekend. Bye. And that's it. There's the boundaries that are here. Like, work is not everything. You don't get defined by it, which is really kind of cool. So you're not staying late. You're not working the weekends. You're only there when the hours you're supposed to work, which is really nice. And I will say another thing you notice is work is a bit slower because you don't have that going overtime, doing all this stuff. Things do take more time, and that's where a lot of Americans sometimes get frustrated with their European colleagues because, like, oh, can we just knock this project out and move on? Oh, why are you taking so long? Why you have a lunch break? You have a coffee break? Can we just move through? And so they get that U.S. get that frustrated with the kind of the slow work kind of stuff, or at least I would say the not hurry up and rush kind of thing. It's like, hey, we're going to get it done when we get it done. Don't worry about it. And that's the thing is people, they're not worrying about it. It's not like work is everything. And I think that's a big thing to mention is you are not defined by your work in Europe.
Gente, isso é muito interessante. Eu moro no Brasil e muitos brasileiros deixam o Brasil para tentar uma vida melhor nos Estados Unidos. E, de fato, os Estados Unidos é um bom lugar para fazer dinheiro devido a toda a questão capitalista que é muito forte lá. Só que assim, eu vi histórias de pessoas que foram para lá, elas fizeram muito dinheiro, elas compraram casas, compraram carros, mas na hora de aproveitar, elas não conseguiram. Elas estavam tão exaustas por conta de tanto trabalhar para fazer dinheiro que chegou na hora, elas não sentiam mais prazer em nada, né? E conheço até histórias de pessoas que voltaram e diziam que não era vida, porque ela tinha um carro na garagem, ela tinha muitos celulares, lançamento e tudo mais, mas eles não conseguiam aproveitar, né? Então é interessante ver como a questão do dinheiro para o europeu não é visto como tudo, né? E acho que isso gera um equilíbrio natural nas coisas. É muito interessante observar por esse ângulo.
In the US, it's like, I live to work. And here in Europe, it's more like I work to pay for the fantastic food. I mean, it's just part of life, but that's not my life. Like, I honestly can say, like, when I did my PhD and master's and stuff, when I did it in Europe, when I look back on it, I don't think of it like I did my PhD in Portugal. It was, oh, I lived in Lisbon. like it was a life and you had that separation and you're not defined by it. And that's one of those things that's really nice, is that you can be you. Like, that's one of the things I really loved about working here. But one of the things that you'll notice that you might not like when you do work in Europe is you're not really truly friends with your coworkers. Now, you can be friendly with your coworkers and you'll probably more likely to go get drinks on a Friday after work with people, but making that close friendship bond, it's not as much there here in Europe, because a lot of people, they live and work in the city they grew up in. So they have friends since they were little kids. They're still friends with their buddy from kindergarten, first grade, when they're 50 years old, 60 years old, 30 years old, 20 years old, whatever. And therefore, you as a foreigner coming in, it's hard to get into a friendship circle because they already have their friends. And that's why sometimes expats end up leaving destinations that are super cool because they're lonely. You live in a city with millions of people and you don't have friends. And it is really tough. That's why I'm saying sometimes it's easier, if you're going to be an expat in a place, to be an expat in a Paris, a London, a Milan, a Berlin, where a lot of people have come and moved to, but not just international expats coming there, but also people from all over Italy move to Milan. People from all over Germany move to Berlin. So they're looking for friends as well. So it's a little bit easier to make friends. But that is one of those things, is you might have it that you're not really super friends with your colleagues. And some of them you'll still call Herr Wolters after you've been working with them for 30 years. You're still Herr Wolters and not even on a first name sometimes. So do be aware of that. Now, it's not always the case. You can make friends, but I think it is one of those things that's important to mention, because finding that good friend base when you first move abroad is really important, so you have that social connection. Now,
Gente, por favor, me deixe saber nos comentários se realmente é difícil assim para fazer amizade no trabalho, porque ele é dos Estados Unidos, né? Tá falando sobre os Estados Unidos, e aí, tipo, ele já encontra o contraste grande entre os europeus. Eu vejo os brasileiros falando que são os americanos que são frios, e o americano diz que o americano não é frio e o europeu que é, então eu fico super confusa. Eu nunca viajei para fora, então assim, é difícil para mim, então apenas me deixe saber nos comentários, por favor.
Another thing that I will definitely tell you is true is if you come and work in Europe, you do not make anywhere near the same amount of money as you do in the U.S. Like, that's why a lot of Europeans like going to the U.S., because they make a lot of money. They can get more stuff. And so you do have that. And so when you think about it, maybe that's something when you think about your retirement, you're thinking about, hey, what am I going to do in the future? You have to think about those things. That's why when I have students like, oh, Mark, I want to go work in Europe. Like, all right, well, do you have college loans? Because you still have to pay them off, and you might make as much money to pay it off as fast as you do in the U.S. But then they're like, yeah, but in Europe we don't pay for our education, so it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, that's why there's a little bit of difference. But the pay gap is a real thing. Like, between the U.S. and the EU, I mean, I won't lie to you. Like, some places you do get paid better. Switzerland, Germany, England, you get paid really well. Like, those are like, okay, comparable, you're doing okay, but go work in Portugal. Go work in Eastern Europe. Like, the money is, literally like a fraction of what you make in the U.S. So that's one thing I think is important to mention. However, you do get more with your money when you live in Europe, when you work in Europe, because you do have more benefits. Maybe you get paid a 13th month out of the year, or sometimes a 14th month out of the year. So those there. Maybe you get credits for childcare, or you get credits for, transportation allowances. So there's a little bit more like freebies in Europe that they give with you versus just, oh, look, a pizza party, thanks, boss, that you get in the U.S. And kind of looking at things in general. I know when I worked in Europe, I made less money than I did when I worked in the U.S., but I will say life in Europe is cheaper. I mean, living, existing, loving life is just cheaper in Europe than it is in the U.S. I mean, that's why I tell people all the time, if you're going to go on vacation, once you get to Europe, it is cheaper to enjoy Europe than it is to enjoy, the U.S. I mean, I'm here in Torino, which is a relatively expensive city in Italy, and it's still cheaper than going to Orlando for me. Accommodation, going out to eat, it's better than there, right? And so you think about that, it's like, yeah, I don't make as much, but I don't need as much money as well, because you are more in the city and more things are going on, right? And that's why it's important to mention your transportation to work is a lot different. It's not a car-based society in Europe. You are switching to public transportation. Now, if you worked in the big city in the U.S., probably you might already use the L in Chicago or the
É muito interessante isso que ele fala, porque eu acho que isso está muito atrelado com essa questão realmente das pessoas, né? Tipo, eu vejo que na Europa as pessoas não têm essa necessidade de ficar desesperadas por fazer dinheiro, porque elas têm um estado de bem-estar social muito mais forte. enquanto nos Estados Unidos você não tem isso. Então, acho que isso faz com que as pessoas nos Estados Unidos fiquem mais desesperadas, né? Para poder arrumar a vida delas de alguma forma. Eu acho que isso influencia muito. De fato, eu acho que isso acaba moldando muito a forma como a mente das pessoas funcionam.
Trains, in New York, but public transportation isn't a thing in the U.S. And when you come to Europe, it becomes integrated into your thing. So you're learning when I need to take the bus, when does that metro go by? I remember when I lived in Berlin, I knew exactly where my S-Bahns were going, and I'm like, I gotta get up that escalator. Like, it's definitely different than, I gotta sit in the traffic jam to get to work. Now, don't get me wrong, you can get a car, and believe me, you drive in Europe, you're gonna be in a traffic jam every day because there's not a lot of space, but also just to get into work is a different experience. And you'll notice there's a reason why in the U.S. our cars have nice cup holders and really good stereo systems, because we sit in our cars all the time, we're drinking on our way, whereas in here in Europe, it's a shorter commute, but also with the crazy drivers and so many more packed things, you don't have time to change the channel. You don't have time to focus on what you're driving. Now, another money thing you'll notice is a bit different is taxes. Yeah, you're going to pay a lot more taxes when you are here in Europe than you are in the U.S. In general, I'm just going to say that if you're making decent money, a lot more comes out, especially if you're going to Sweden or Norway, Finland. Like, taxes do get a bit higher, so that's one of those things you'll notice that in your check that a lot more is missing when you're working in Europe, but you do get more stuff with it. So that's one of those things like, I do have relatively cheap healthcare or free public healthcare. Yeah, maybe the NHS isn't the greatest, but it's included with living here, so I guess that's okay. But I will say, for the things you're not gonna like, the biggest one that Americans have a tough time adjusting to is European bureaucracy. I know we've got the DMV in the US, and that's our one example of annoying bureaucracy, but oh my gosh, try to get internet at your house. Try, if you're in France, try to schedule a pickup of that Amazon package with a delivery driver. It's insane, right? The levels of bureaucracy, the level of things you have to go through, the hoops you jump through, the forms you sign, the stamps you need. And a lot of it's these catch-22s, hey, I need to get an apartment, but in order to get an apartment, I need a bank account. But in order to get a bank account, I need an apartment where I have an address. The bureaucracies here are such next level that for Americans, they get very frustrated with it.
Gente, isso é muito engraçado, porque essa questão dos impostos. Aqui no Brasil, a gente paga muito imposto, e aqui no Brasil a gente tem muita burocracia. Eu, por exemplo, já era para ter voltado para minha cidade, não consegui voltar, né? Estou prestes a voltar por conta da minha documentação, do meu trabalho. Eu demorei 6 meses, eu comecei a resolver isso em agosto, e só terminei em fevereiro desse ano. Tudo para mim arrumar a questão do meu documento de trabalho. Então, ao meu ver, quando eu olho assim para as coisas da Europa, a impressão que eu tenho é que há uma burocracia, mas a burocracia é para fazer as coisas funcionarem, sabe? É a impressão que eu tenho. Não sei se é bem assim, mas aqui no Brasil nós pagamos imposto, temos muita burocracia e as coisas funcionam de uma forma muito, muito difícil, muito, muito arrastada.
Another thing I think is important to mention about your workplace actually here in Europe is don't expect everyone to fall in line with the boss. The boss isn't necessarily God. Now, some parts of Europe, the boss is kind of like a godlike figure, but in general, you have a lot more discussion, a lot more consensus at work than in the U.S., where it's kind of like, well, the boss says this, so why are we even debating it? Here, you do have that open debate. And for some Americans, they're like, oh my gosh, he's talking back to the boss. What are you doing? You're going to get fired. No, you have much more discussion that's here. And I think one of the reasons why you have that is another difference is you don't worry about getting fired in Europe like you do in the U.S. I think I do a great job where I teach, but every year I'm still worried that I'm not going to get asked to come back the next year. I mean, it's very much a worrisome thing. You have the at-will work environment at the U.S. that you never know, right? Whereas in Europe, you have a lot more protections. You're not worried that you're going to get fired because your boss had a bad day, because your union is there for you, or there's protections by law that if you do get fired, they have to pay you for a year or two or something like that. Those kind of things make a difference. Mothers, they're not worried about having kids because they have protection for maternity leave, and they get paid maternity leave, paid paternity leave. I mean, those kind of things make a difference, so you do feel more comfortable, you can share your true feelings about a project. Hey, what do we need to do? And so you have a different mentality, and Also, I think another difference is the mentality of the workforce. It's not as much like grind and the hustle and I need my side hustle kind of stuff like you have in the US. It's much more of that laid back attitude, that laissez-faire attitude when it comes to work. And then I want to mention one thing that I did notice when I worked in Europe is you're not going to have as much diversity in your workforce here in Europe as you do in the US. Just because Europe in general, like you're in Italy, it's full of Italians. So there's a lot more Italians, a lot less diversity in the workers than you have in the US. There's a melting pot of places. Now, if you go to like bigger cities, yeah, if you're in Milan or Paris or London, you're gonna have more of that. Like the UK has much more diversity, France has much more diversity, but that's one of those things when you work, you'll notice that there's not a lot of diversity sometimes in your workplace when you're here in Europe. So if you've been an expat working in Europe, tell us, where have you worked? What was your experience? And what were some of the differences that you had? And don't worry, I'm going to do a video on this about what Europeans find strange about working in the US. Like, boss, why do I have to be here 2 hours early and stay 2 hours late? Yeah, we're going to talk about that as well. Anyway, I wish you all the best. I'll say bye from here in Torino. And also, I loved working abroad. I mean, literally, it was like 10, 15 years, okay? So I would definitely do it again because I loved working in Europe. And I wish you all the best. Au revoir, or tschüss, or auf Wiedersehen, or arrivederci, or ciao.
Gente, realmente eu adoro ver esses vídeos. Infelizmente, né, esse contraste que vocês têm com os Estados Unidos, o Brasil, ao invés de se aproximar do que a gente tem, né, na Europa, está se aproximando dos Estados Unidos. A gente está perdendo muitos direitos trabalhistas e tudo mais, mas eu gosto muito da forma como esse equilíbrio é aplicado pelo europeu, né? Eu vejo que o europeu tem esse equilíbrio em muitas áreas da vida, não só na questão do trabalho, mas é que quando você fala sobre trabalho, trabalho é uma coisa que influencia muito a vida de uma pessoa, né? Ele é como se fosse uma âncora. Então, se você tá mal no trabalho, muitas vezes você leva essa coisa ruim, né, para casa também. Então, quando você equilibra um ambiente de trabalho, acho que tudo flui melhor. E, inclusive, essa questão de você não ter que precisar se matar para trabalhar, né? Infelizmente, muitas pessoas acabam se matando tanto de trabalhar que quando chega no final, né, elas têm as coisas, mas tipo, onde está a felicidade, né? Ela já não tem mais aquele prazer porque ela está tão esgotada, né? Tipo, ela se esgotou durante o caminho, e então aquela vitória já não tem mais o mesmo sabor. Mas realmente eu amo esse equilíbrio que o europeu tem. Adoraria que a gente tivesse mais disso, né, aqui no Brasil. Infelizmente, aqui, assim, não estão muito preocupados com isso, né? A gente vê que cada dia está piorando. Existem algumas leis para tentar melhorar, mas definitivamente a gente tem perdido muito nesse aspecto. Mas, bom, essa foi a minha reação. Eu espero que você tenha gostado desse vídeo. Se você gostou, considere se inscrever. Vou adorar ter você por aqui. Se você já foi inscrito, não esquece de ativar as notificações. Então é isso, obrigada por assistir esse vídeo e nos vemos na próxima reação. Tchau!